Hello and welcome to the Volunteer Firefighter podcast. My name is Ash, and I'm joined with two of these buddies. We got Todd.
Hello.
And we got Scott.
Hey there. I just realized the guy, he looks like an eagle. The guy behind me. I'm an eagle.
Sorry, how does that go?
This is going to be a late night. All right, so tonight we're going to kick things off with a bit of news. A bit of a fire down south, is there?
Yeah, there's Los Angeles. There's a big fire that closed one of the main freeways. It's the Santa Monica freeway. Yeah. Bring up the news here. Turns out I can't bring up the news and still talking the thing. Anyways, it was on the freeway. The I-10 is closed. There was a massive pallet fire, among other things that was on fire. But the video was pretty crazy. The amount of pallets that were burning, among also with a number of vehicles burned under the freeway, which caused the overpass to have a fair amount of structural damage. So they're not sure if they can actually open that freeway back up until the engineers come in and check. And it's closed currently, which they said it's 300,000 vehicles a day, commuters a day over that freeway. So obviously that causes some potential issues with rerouting of commuters and such. So yeah, it was pretty massive. I think they had like 150 firefighters working on it. They had a little robot fire truck dog looking thing, tank. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, seeing some of the video, that does sound pretty nuts. They look pretty crazy. All those pallets under it was heavy fuel load, obviously. And I think it was, what's the word that they call it now? A unhoused encampment.
Right.
Yeah, there's like a big homeless population under there as well. So lots of people. Obviously, some of the videos that were out there, it was like some people fighting right on the bridge as the fire's going off. It was crazy. Like, it's crazy.
I was kind of like, oh, this is all firefighters do is train to fight pallet fires. It's like, yes, the thing we fight all the time in live fire is pallet fires. Oh, that's a lot of pallets. It's more pallets than I can find.
Oh, pallets, and there's a sea of parked cars down there too. I mean, probably. Never mind. It's probably all stolen. But yeah, one hell of a mess. And you look at just you get one vehicle fire, two vehicle fires in like an underground parkade with the amount of shit that it causes. You look at all that. Yeah, it's a pretty wild fire.
Yeah, so I guess we'll hear what that means for the bridge and for traffic in the coming days. But that was a lot of heat and definitely a lot of damage, or a lot of potential damage to the structure. So lots of testing to make sure that it's safe before they can open that back up to traffic. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. I think we'll go on to some of our training. So I know we got into a couple different scenarios up here. Scott, what do you guys get up to?
So we actually brought out the new engine, and we want to run the monitor, because the monitor / deck gun is new to us. So we didn't really have any procedures for it yet. So brought some of the senior members out on training night, and we actually a few things we wanted to try, because we don't run a big 4-inch supply line yet. We wanted to see how the monitor reacts to a 2.5-inch supply line from the hydrant. So we put 2 lines into the truck from the hydrant, because knowing that we were probably going to kind of overwhelm the system. So we started with the 1 line, and then started with the maximum amount of tips we could put on the deck gun, which I can't remember the size. I think it was like maybe an inch. I think it's like 1.125. Yeah, 1.125 at the very end of the tip. And it was launching like, well over 100 feet. But it was very fine. Like it was it was obviously, it would be good for like an apartment fire or, a few floors up kind of thing. But it wasn't even that deluge to put out a massive structure fire. It would have been, it would have been great for, any of those like high-rise fires. So then we kind of played around with the different tips. We went all the way down to basically, I was running like a straight 2-inch. Obviously, that was a lot more water volume, a lot less distance, but it was definitely a very heavy deluge we were hitting with, and using a lot more water in the flow. So we actually had to run both lines from the hydrant. So it was kind of a night to study and research things. So we were trying different combinations because we want to know what to drive around. Like, what are we just going to drive around in town with? Like, are we going to run this big stack of tips on our monitor? Or are we going to run, with like a 2-inch straight? So we actually came up with, I think it was an 1.75 was what we are going to run around with on regular days, and that gives us kind of that best of both worlds. Give us some reach, but it really gave us that deluge for host fires, which is really our bread and butter structure fires here. Don't get a lot of apartment fires, and if we did, we could just attach some more tips to it. We also we ran some timers to see how long it would take just without a hydrant, as the hydrant operator sitting in a hydrant. If that truck was to roll up and needed to do a heavy hit right away, we had about 2 minutes to hook up the hydrant and get hydrant water flowing. So not a lot of time, definitely a lot less time than just running a couple inch and a half. So you really have to be moving with the 2.5, or sorry, with the hydrant, and also we definitely need to have a second truck get that same hydrant. So we had the first new engine, which was that truck. It hit its own hydrant, and then the second truck came in and tagged into that same hydrant, pushed its line. It's 2.5 inch as well to the engine. We are definitely looking at some storts for that truck, just some 4-inch, just to keep that volume of water up.
I think the other big thing too that a lot of people forget about, and we mentioned it kind of before we started recording, was just a lot of the apparatus placement. If you decide to use your deck gun for that initial knockdown phase, is because it throws such a distance, and generally in our smaller town, like even where the majority of the houses are, we're generally parking fairly close. So you got to be really cognizant of where you're going to be parking that apparatus if that's going to be a quick knockdown. And then your angle of operation too, like if you're going to be dipping that tip down, if we're too close, our edges of our truck is usually in the way. We can't get as low. And we've done some practice scenarios like that as well. So we had to get our guys to really place back. That's my bedtime reminder. Again, just park that apparatus accordingly. And remember that, hey, once you fire that sucker up, you're throwing out a pretty good distance. So make sure you're not ripping through everything. You're actually being efficient with your water use. Because like you said, you can drain that tank in under 2 minutes. So it can be pretty fast.
It's very impressive watching that thing work. Because we've obviously seen them work in videos, and we've actually played around with doors before, Todd. But to actually have our own and to really, really run it through cases, it was quite impressive. The distance we could get and the amount of water. Like we had a lake going there.
Well, that's the nice thing is, like, if you have a good fire that's maybe it's just exterior or interior to exterior and it's just rocking, to get that quick knockdown, it's got so much GPMs to it. It can suppress something really fast. Like, we know it's going to drain that tank in 2 minutes, but if you got somebody who's dialed and you got your angle all ready to go and you fire it up and you're hitting it instantly, you can shut her down pretty quick. Just that quick kind of 30-second knockdown. Usually that's fast enough. Then you can shut her down. By that time, you got another line stretching out and you're getting your supply lines hooked up. So it's definitely, it's a great tactic to have.
Yeah, seeing how fast that can drain that tank, for us, I don't want to say always, but our go-to for the quick attack is the first engine pulls up, they flake out the lines, they go and do fire suppression. Second dude will lay in. That's something that we have to get away from with this one if we think we're going to be running that deck gun. So that puts a bit more onus on the IC, whoever's going to be getting there first, is to really get that size up and let them know, hey, I need the big water immediately, and then start to think about where that closest hydrant is and get that first you to lay into the hydrants as well.
It really puts a whole new face in big water, because big water used to be just the 2.5-inch line that we'd run. Now it's like, okay, we could really hit it with some big water, because realistically we could hit it with the deck gun and the 2.5 inches. We actually talked about that. Like we actually we probably overwhelmed the pump. I think these would be just too much water flowing at once. I think the way we had the monitor flowing, and then we were talking like we could easily go to a couple inch and a half running, or if we had to like run the monitor and then pull the 2.5, one of the 2.5s off the side, and then start flowing that and knock down the monitor. Basically, the monitor's there to kick off the fire and then kind of flatten it, and then do some follow up work with the 2.5, and then do the kind of the fiddly work with the inch and a half, or the close in support work with the inch and a half.
I think you nailed it, right? Like it's like we kind of operate the same. Like our first do generally will go right to the seat of the fire and start hitting, because we know that we want that exterior water application, if it's feasible at that time, to do that quick reset, right? And start resetting that fire clock. But again, it's not an absolute, because the one thing in the pay on call departments is we don't always know the exact time for when that second truck is coming. So it may take a little bit longer this particular day, or it may be right bang on to what we're used to in that certain time frame. But you need to communicate that back and forth pretty quickly to your crews, saying, hey, okay, do I have that second truck coming? As an IC, you need to be switched on and listening to that radio and the first truck as well. That, hey, I heard the second engine roll, so yeah, I know the time frame now in my head to, yes, this is going to work. Start hitting it with that big water application, and then hopefully that second truck is there to feed you that line, if that first truck didn't actually capture that hydrant. And then the other things is, if you don't have your hydrants nearby, some of these rural areas, you might have some hydrants, but they're a lot longer stretch. Or if we're going into tender operation, that's going to switch everything quickly. Still might be the right tactic at that time, but shutting it off at half that tank, right?
Yeah, we had said basically if we have no water supply, we're probably not going to deck on won't be our first move, unless it's like we want to do that quick knockdown, maybe throw 600-700 gallons at it, and then keep that reserve for inch and a half follow ups, and then wait the tenders to arrive. But it wouldn't be like we're not going to sit there and just dump water on the thing. It's going to be hopefully for a clock reset.
Yeah, so like Scott said, that was a bit of a more senior crew that you guys had, which is pretty sweet. Having that opportunity to really break that down, test with it, and kind of come up with some of those SOPs. We can start to build those out now, and get our minds wrapped around what that's going to look like. My crew was kind of the polar opposite for the most part, which will be interesting next week for you to have a little bit less time in. Definitely a bit more of our junior crew. Definitely switched on. Like they're very, very like dialed in, but just don't have, I guess, like the driving experience. Generally, when you're new, you're fresh, you want to be in that back seat. They don't necessarily get their air brakes right away. So all of their, I guess, their learning has been on actual fire attack, which is great. But now they can start to get that, hey, this is what, I guess more of the mechanical side of it means to them, especially with this new engine, which is a little bit different with that monitor, and there is going to be a lot different. So it will be sweet to see how they react to that, and what kind of things that they can pick up. With that, so I did have the more junior crew, and we worked on venting, mostly positive pressure. We did throw in some hydraulic venting. So we started off the night just in our ready room here. Basically drew our burn building up on the whiteboard. Had a bit of a preamble. Talked about the history of positive pressure venting, which was.
You said the history of fire. This is fire.
So back in 200 BC. Yeah, no, it was more so the history of positive pressure. So most, if not all, of our lesson books are written from the States. They're big on the vertical vent, and positive pressure is a big thing up here in Western Canada. And I mean, it's been working great for us. But going back, it was like I don't have it in front of me. Early 1900s, the first smoke extractor was brought into play. Yeah.
Or you actually went full historical. Wow, wow, impressive.
Yeah. And then it was like 15 or 20 years later, used that same technology as a smoke extractor, um, flipped it around, and started the positive pressure idea to push in the um, fresh air into the structure. Definitely was more of like a PPV, more overhaul, um, but not pause pressure attack. Up until like the late 80s, early 90s is when some uh, California fire departments started to put it into commonplace. So as I'm giving the lesson, one of our junior firefighters, I'm like, wait a minute, you weren't even alive. Like, I'm like, it wasn't even like, this is not a new technique, but like the 90s, it's not that long ago, right? I'm like, wait a minute, you weren't even alive yet, were you? He's like, no.
See, and I would have thought the Dutch invented the positive pressure with their windmills, and just
Jeez. And their wooden shoes were very effective for all that water deluging.
you're like, hey, my house is on fire. Oh, that's better when I have this windmill attached to it.
I'll see if I can work that into the lesson plan next time. So anyway, we just kind of went on, built on that, and it's funny because I joked, and one of our firefighters is a school teacher, and I was like, hey, you know what, it's easy to go over these skills with our more seasoned guys because they've heard it before. We're just kind of brushing up on some of our techniques or whatever. Like the younger guys, they like, let's actually give them a bit more of the why are we doing this, and then we hit on I think the entire time in there was like 10ish minutes. Like, it was fast, but just talked about like when you would want to do it and then when you wouldn't want to. So just reading that smoke, making sure that you're not going to get some of those like backdraft or smoke explosion scenarios, right? If you have a poor vent, if you don't vent at all and you're just pressurizing the structure, I said, if you want to hop on YouTube, look at any of the American departments that talk shitty about the positive pressure, it's because they're missing a step, right? So really hitting that WTF, windows and then fan. So we talked about that. We drew it up on the whiteboard. It's actually still up there now. We're going to go over it quickly. It'll probably be 5 minutes with the experienced guys. But once we went through all of that, kind of the do's and the don'ts and like what to look for, really reading that smoke, we got geared up and we went down to the building. Did another bit of a preamble as Kevin was in there getting the building going. And just kind of paired them up. We had a couple of senior guys that were with us as well. So teamed a senior up to be kind of that lead as they entered the building. Kevin stayed on the inside as the safety jack and just got him to run through the motions of going in there, checking the door for heat, open the door, light fire layout, closing the door again, getting the vent open, and then going through the motions of pushing in, using that pillow or of fresh air, if you will, to follow that in. Took a thermal and checked how much heat was in there as they opened the door, checked how much heat once that fan started to work, really noticing how quickly it makes that environment a lot safer, way better visibility. And again, if you do have a patient inside, you're just increasing that the likelihood of a positive rescue.
Yeah, and that's huge, right? We talk a lot about that. Same with why are we doing it? We've got our flow path. And that's you're now controlling everything. It's just way more to control. Cooling that atmosphere as well, systematically as we're advancing in. It's just making that survivability rate so much better for anybody's inside, and that's key, right? And then we talk about again with that when we get into the actual searching and pulling somebody out is what's the viable areas. By having that positive pressure going, it's again controlling that flow path. So if you've got a room that's not really affected, maybe that's the best place to drag them in because you're still smoking shit and heat in that hallway per se or that other room. However, now you got a nice isolated room. So yeah, it's key having these guys understand the do's and don'ts when we want to use it and when we don't. So that's good that you're busting out the history books. The school teacher must have loved it.
Yeah, there was definitely a couple of smirks that were coming from him. And then the classic school teacher, as we're getting ready to go in for one of the final scenarios there, or like the final evolutions, if you will, he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm kind of not feeling all right. I might have to poop. It might be a heart attack." And I'm like, we haven't taught these guys RIT yet, man. He's like, they'll figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So the final evolution, guys push in, do it flawlessly, like did awesome. And they all come out and they knew that they did it great. So like chests out, like head up high, everything was going great. And I'm watching 1, 2, 3 out. Person at the door is still sitting there, and the 3 that are out are, yeah, this is great. I go up to the door. I'm like, hey, are we missing somebody? They're like, yep. Should let your guys know that. So they poke over. Hey, we're missing somebody. They're like sitting there. I'm like, you're missing somebody. Go, go, go. Like, let's get back in there. Let's, figure out why. I mean, Kev was in there as our tech. So like the high chance everybody's coming out and somebody's just chatting with Kev as they're walking out. But, it became that big chatting point afterwards of you enter as a team, you exit as a team. I'm like, I don't care if it's a burning building. I don't care if you're going up towards a vehicle fire. I don't care if you're walking in somewhere for a course on a weekend. You walk in as a group, you leave as a group, you make sure that everybody, if you're in with 3, you're out with 3. So they quickly action back up, got their regulators on, they're back inside the building, and they found our teacher laying face down, obviously having some sort of medical issue. So having minimal training, I would say, on what to actually do, it just kind of fell back on what you think you should do. So somebody got on the radio right away, and they did call a mayday. So we've taught them what to do in the instance of if something happens. So they did call out a mayday immediately. We relayed that over the radio, so they knew. Everybody else on the outside, as I was like, hey, we have mayday, mayday, mayday. The people that were doing some exterior watercraft came over and mustered at the door. Ended up bumping them in as kind of that RIT and our rescue team. We didn't have RIT established on our training, obviously, because it's 25 feet into a sea-can. But I got those guys to action as RIT, so they bumped in to assist. And I ended up pulling our door control person away from the door. I said, hey, I'll bump in the door. I want you to be medic on the outside when this firefighter comes out. So they were in there. They did probably the dirtiest packaging I've ever seen, but it was effective. They got the guy out. Basically ended up just getting a rescue strap and threw around the shoulder strap. There was no tightening. There was no adjusting. It was just, let's get this guy out of here. So they started to do the drag, and immediately I'm like, hey, stop there, guys. I'm like, Mike, I want you to get up. Let's walk out. Let's not damage any of our gear. Had a brand new SCBA on. We don't need to be dragging that across the old cement.
Yeah, that may have happened a couple times. We damaged some gear doing high intensity training. So
yeah, the chief gets pretty rattled if you're like, we need another SBA cylinder. So, just got him to get up and walk. And I said, okay, lay back down as basically as your big drug. So as soon as they were down, 2 of our other more senior members that were over there with me, I'm like, hey, we are going to do, we're going to do the full removal. We're not going to be doing any of the firefighter down CPR tonight, but we will chat about it. But what I do want you to do is get up on your knees, get that cylinder rested up on your knees, and then we'll prep to shuck the oyster, if you will. And I just basically stood over top of them, explained every step of the way. Said, okay, let's get those hands up, let's get the gloves off, let's just start stripping the patient down. And we walked them through. They got to see how you can strip that firefighter out easily, exposing the chest early, talking about working as a team together, like as you're unbuttoning or unzipping, some CPR through your gear is better than none, but getting on that early and then working again as a team. So, compression, zip, compression, trying to do the best that we can is still better than doing nothing. So definitely an eye-opening experience. A lot of really good skill set was learned early on, and then throwing that kind of wrench in the spokes. I don't know how much they got out of it, other than just some of that early stress inoculation of like what this is going to look like, and some of the things to maybe expect.
I think going back to when you first started, Ash, what was the first night that you trained?
Yeah, it was exactly that. So, 15-minute, if you will, and probably not even crash course on how to put on your SCBA. And then we went into that exact scenario in the exact building with a collapse in the exact same position. So, um, these guys had way more experience leading up to that, but nothing on the firefighter down. So, it was exactly the same thing. It was, hey, what do you think you should do? I'm like, I think I should call for help. All right, we're going to use a radio that you don't have. So somebody else with me made that call. But and they're like, now what? I'm like, we should figure out a way to get this guy out of here. Okay, like, what do you have on you? I'm like, nothing. I just got my gear 25 minutes ago. I'm like, I got nothing. I haven't pilfered it from anybody yet. So out came the rescue strap, and I got the 2-minute crash course on the inside of the building. But it was in essence the same idea, which like we speak positively and negatively about. Um, but these guys got definitely a lot of pre-skill prior to that. Just nothing in this moment, but they could be put in that position where something happens. So as much as they might have some theory on it, as much as they might have read about it, being able to witness it and get their hands on it, and as dirty as it was, they got them out, and everything was a success. So it was a lot of fun. Really awesome training scenario.
I think it always goes back to that what's important now thing. We can't ever train every scenario. No matter how long we train for. There's just not enough time to train every scenario that we ever come in contact with fire. So I guess it's an early reminder, an early start for these guys to be like, yeah, sometimes we don't. Sometimes you might not have been trained for the scenario you're about to hit. I mean, we will train them on red, of course, but there's going to be lots of times where it's something that we're just like, what is this? Okay, well, let's just figure it out. What's important now? Use some of the principles of firefighting that we've learned from before. If you start attaching principles together, they usually work out to be to solve the problem that you're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even just going back to when they first came out of the building, and they're all excited and high-fiving each other and whatnot, and then realizing that, oh, wait a minute, we're missing somebody. So they're going to learn from that moment in this training environment that why it's so important for crew integrity to hey, you exit together and then calm up to IC, hey, attack one, we're count four outside the alpha side, right? Or whatever the terminology that you guys want to use. But as long as that's being communicated and the self-buddy team check has been made, that's what's important. And then everybody knows that, hey, we're all out. And having that door control guy realizing that, hey, no, we're missing one. Oh, yeah, hey, we're missing this person still. Okay, back in it, right? Yeah, so that's a huge takeaway. They won't forget that again. And then they'll just continue to build these skills. So it's good.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest thing is, like Todd just said, there's certain parts of that will be ingrained. I don't think they will ever exit a building without making sure everybody's there again. And then just a few things they have now seen what that looks like as a firefighter down. They've heard that Mayday call. I think there's a lot of key things that you can take away from it, and then we can just build on the skill set. But like Scott said, if you can piece certain bits of training together and kind of fall on what you think is important, you can generally have pretty good success. As well as like they would never be a team of 3 going in alone without somebody senior, and they had two guys that were with them that were senior. One of the senior guys happened to be an asshole and have a heart attack. The other senior guy was inside and was helping them. So, like wanting to let them kind of do some of the, the figuring out themselves. So it wasn't spoon feeding them by any means, but yeah, allowed them to figure out the problem alone and offered some assistance when it was required.
Yeah, and that's what we do in certain training evolutions, right? Like, we want the guys to think outside the box and figure out, like Scott said, like get these kind of priorities in training and figure, okay, well, what's important now? What do I need to do to get this step done? And sometimes in these training evolutions, because we're so used to the scenario or whatever we're doing, and it's a very safe building, and we're super familiar with the building, and then all of a sudden, having that wrench thrown in, and that could be a real event in a training. Somebody could have gone down. So just always instilling that same safety aspect into all of our training. Like I said, they're going to build from it and learn from it, and we all do it. So it's worked out as a win. It's like a good night.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be curious to see. I mean, I'm sure it's going to go smooth next week with the more experienced crew. We'll see if somebody drops this time. I mean, we had success with the first time. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't.
One thing. Wonder if the guys next week will sound the siren or the horn, I should say. The three blasts and the air horn. Obviously, the newer guys wouldn't know to do that yet. I mean, they do know what it means, but they probably wouldn't be thinking because they're not going to be running the engine. So maybe good reminder to the guys, senior guys next week. Actually, our new engine has it right on the pump deck, which is kind of cool. The emergency horn.
Yeah, that's going to make it way easier for that pump operator to access that air horn, right? And train for it. Like I said, if you're throwing in that scenario next week, gentle little reminder, say, hey, remember our Mayday procedures? These are the steps. See if they catch it.
Actually, maybe when we hear it from you guys, maybe we'll blast it too if we're still on the training ground doing our thing. Get that answer. The answer to the siren or to this horn is the other horn, so everyone knows.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good. That it is something that we spoke about. We actually didn't have anybody on the pump deck, so there was nobody at the truck. We just basically set it to RPM and had the recirc valve open just so we didn't overheat anything, and allowed the guys to go in, keeping manpower semi-limited for practice. But I mean, that's something that we can throw in this coming week for sure. So we'll see how that goes. Todd, you guys get up to much this past week?
Yeah, so I was working, so I arrived a little bit late. But basically, what we were running our guys through again is we're just kind of revisiting a lot of the safety stuff again, just kind of dusting off some cobwebs of certain things. So we ran our groups through some first responder scenarios for like the man down CPR skills. So just really touching base with how to run the cardiac arrest in a group of either like a solo responder until your help arrives, and then into like a 3-man group. And then also if we're just that fire truck company there that's working that arrest. So I know we've talked about it in the past. So having your first guy come in, do your usual, first responder checks, are they alert and orientated, are they conscious breathing, airways, breathing circulation, and then get on that chest right away. It's talked about hard and fast, right? You want to be doing about 100 to 120 compressions per minute. So making sure it's effective, not too fast and not too slow. And what it actually does or doesn't do if you're doing it too fast or too slow. So if your compression rate is too slow, basically it's priming a pump, right? Priming that chest, that thoracic cavity in your heart. So by going too slow, you're not getting that adequate blood flow out to where you need. And if you're going too fast, you're not getting any flow. You're not getting any refill into the chambers of the heart. So by doing that nice, steady 100 to 120 beats per minute, you're priming that pump, you're getting that blood flow, then it's going to start circulating and continuing to stay on that chest. So we talked about kind of generally the officer standing back, being a bit detached, running the overall scenario, paying attention to the 2-minute timer, cycling guys out, having guys ready to come in for that next compression cycle, what that's going to look like. Real estate, setting up for success is the huge thing. And I noticed a few guys, same thing, they kind of sucked in to okay, I'm going to swap out compression, so I'm going to come in right beside you or behind you and get ready. And as soon as they're off the chest, then they position themselves and get ready. But it was too much time off the chest. So having that person on the opposite side of the victim, and then having your hands hovering over top of the person doing those compressions, communicating, okay, hey, we're going to stop, ready, stop, boom, back on the chest immediately, right? Obviously not while we're doing our analyze phase with the AED. So then, of course, we talked about the first guy, compressions, second guy coming in, getting that AED going, turn it on first, then get your pads out. Because every AED is slightly different, but they're very similar. They all do their self-check system. It takes a little bit to get things going. So turning it on first, letting it do its self-check as you're ripping those pads out, putting those pads on appropriately. And each company generally has a picture of where the pad should be placed. So it's pretty dummy proof, but by chance you get them in the wrong spot, it's not that big of a deal. They're all dual phasic, so they'll work either way, either side you have them on. But yeah, they're pretty dummy proof. And then once that's on, then having that second person or third person rather come in and start setting up for airway and like a 2-person BVA method, right? So having your pocket mask or your face mask from your bag valve mask over the face. One person's got their thumbs on it. They're doing that jaw thrust, holding that face mask directly on the patient, and then the other person doing the bagging, right? And we're doing 30 to 2 compression to ventilation ratio. And we're still doing that. We made that change over through COVID because it's a very high risk for aerosolizing any contaminants and stuff. So having 2 people on that mask and ventilation bag system works great to control that. Having the filter in place in the bag valve mask, and then just working as a team, lots of communication, and then just gave lots of little tips. Like everybody did really good at cleaning the few little bad habits up. But when we talk about getting ready to shock, so you're off the chest during the analyze phase. As soon as it says shock advised, back on the chest with somebody fresh, right? Another fresh person for the next 2-minute cycle. Build that pump, prime that pump, do those compressions. As it's ready to shock, now it's beeping at you, shock advised, beep, beep, beep. It's ready to charge, or it's fully charged, it's ready to send that shock. So generally what we do is the person that's on that chest, they would control the shock button. So, okay, everybody's clear. Okay, I'm clear, you're clear. Off the chest, shocking, boom, shock. Check repulse, back on the chest immediately, right? The one little tidbit I've learned over the years is we always use, if I was at the head doing the ventilation with the bag valve mask, you kind of pull the mask right off and you stand clear and your hands are up showing that you're clear. But then, it's happened to me, is when you shock, it's a very violent reaction. What happens? All that fluid airway, that vomit comes flying right up back out of that airway, and it actually smoked me in the face many, many years ago. I pro on and stuff, but it's fucking disgusting. So I just hold that pocket mask or bag valve mask rather, just over the face, a couple inches away, just to cover. So if something does come out, it's just hitting the mask. It's not going to fly everywhere. And the other big takeaway is the proper adjustment, because if you're bagging and you're filling that gut, you're going to get puke and vomit everywhere. So a lot of the CPR skills, cleaning that up a little bit.
So when you say you're holding it over the face, it looks like you're holding over your face. You don't pull that up.
No.
You over the patient's face.
Yes, do not put it up to your face. That's disgusting. But yeah, so just slightly above the patient's face. Yeah, so one group, actually everybody did that. We cycled our groups through, but one group was doing that. I was out in the training ground doing, just getting some guys running through a new battery operated cutoff saw. The Milwaukee one works fantastic. We're cutting up a bunch of steel and rebar. That was pretty fun. And then our other group just went over some basic carries and lifts with our Manta mat, just to clean up that, because a lot of people have seen it, but not everybody's got hands on. So just talked about best practices, how to roll somebody onto it, how you can take them down the stairs easily. Thinking outside the box for these ambulance assists as well, right? Certain houses and the corners are really tight in these older homes, so sometimes bringing somebody out on a clamshell isn't super efficient. So getting that Manta mat, and quite honestly, a lot of medics tend to forget that the Manta mat is in the back of the truck. So throw it out there, say, hey, the Manta mat, it's going to work really good for this type of patient, and you use it for C-spine as well. So yeah, we just dusted off some skills, ran everybody through the evolutions of that, and it went pretty well.
Sweet. So when you're doing CPR and you have that analyze phase, how much time generally does it take when it's analyzing? Because that should be, like you're saying, when you should be getting ready to just get that switch over.
Right.
So how much time is from the push button for analyze, you're off the chest, hands are free, to back on the chest?
I don't know the exact number, but it's pretty short. It's usually kind of like 5-10 seconds, somewhere around there. It's very fast. It's going to analyze that rhythm and see if it's an effective rhythm to deliver that shock or to not deliver that shock, and it'll tell you. It'll either say shock advised or no shock advised. And then as soon as it tells you either one, you're right away back on the chest. So that's generally when, if we know we're coming up that end of that 2-minute cycle, every AD in the province is set to 2-minute cycles. As soon as you're approaching near that end, that's why that officer being detached, standing back, you'd be paying attention to it. Some defibrillators have a visual screen. It'll count down for you. Some don't. And then, okay, guys, we're approaching 2 minutes. Get ready to swap out CPR. So you have a new compressor come in on the side. Get ready to cover. Hands can go right above him. Be efficient. Communicate. Okay, you ready? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Analyze now. Okay, off the chest. Push the analyze. You're ready to go. It's going to tell you shock advised or no shock advised. Boom, back on the chest. Start priming that pump right away. Or do another full 2-minute cycle, whichever it ends up telling you. But yeah, they're pretty fast, pretty effective. Majority of the well, not all areas of the province, but a lot of areas now we have the life pack 15s as well. So it's a little bit different for certain fire departments. They may not be used to seeing that, but that's what all the ambulances are carrying now as well. So yeah.
Yeah, kind of where I was going with that question. Thinking back to a lot of the calls that we've ran here, where we're going to an arrest. When you have a lot of working space, I think it's great to have, one person work on the left side. If there's empty room on the other side, that's where that relief firefighter can go, so they can jump right back on that chest. But so many times something happened, they're right on the couch and they didn't get drug away, or they're maybe bathroom or in a hallway, and there's not a ton of room. And I find more often than not, you're trying to swap out same side, like you're trying to pass off the left side of the body or whatever, right? So in those 5 to 10 seconds, it seems like forever when you're stood back and watching, but when you've been working the chest for 2 odd minutes, and then there's that quick 10-second break. I mean, at 3 in the morning, getting up off your knees and getting out of the way and getting the next firefighter in there behind you. I don't care who you are. I mean, that's a pretty short window of time to swap out. So, I mean, you do the best that you can, and you make sure that you're prepared. And one thing, when we roll out with 4 in our bush truck for medical, and then 2 on the ambulance, I mean, that's a lot of hands. So there's a lot of fresh hands. Getting that pad down for your knees so you're a bit more comfortable when you're working, just kind of getting yourself set up for success, can make it, when it's not as accessible, a little bit easier on you. So you can, like, not roll out of the way, but so you can get yourself out of the way, get that next firefighter in there, and be ready as quickly as possible, because those 10 odd seconds are going to get eaten up pretty fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so when I talked about like kind of setting up for success, like we referred to it as kind of pit crew CPR. So picture like your F1 race car, right? Like everybody's got a position and a place, and it's fast and effective, right? So initially, when you get in there, if this room doesn't have enough room, okay, what's close? What can we take this moment to drag this person out? Drag them down the hallway to the kitchen, kick that table and crap out of the way, or into the living room. If they're in the bathroom, hell no, get them out, right? Obviously, body size is challenging sometimes, right? If you're the first on scene with just a couple of people, sometimes you can only do as much as you can until you get more help arrive. Many cardiac arrests I've rolled up to, we've been in a bad environment, and if they're only doing compression, say it's a family member or somebody, then okay, hey, we're gonna stop CPR. We're grabbing them and we're removing them from the bed or the couch and dragging them out to an area. And sometimes it's quite a distance down the hallway where we're dragging them to a working space. But we know by taking that moment to do that, does it take you maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds to drag them down the hallway? It's gonna be way more effective in the long run, right? Especially if somebody's doing CPR, like you can prep everything. Okay, get back on that chest, do CPR. Maybe they've done 30 seconds, 45 seconds of compressions. Okay, yeah, we got the table out of the way. We're ready to drag. Okay, perfect. Stop CPR, grab, drag them out, and now start setting things up. Our ADs generally, our life packs have a longer lead to the pads, so you can place it out of the way a little bit more, but the ADs have a very short leash usually. So generally that AD is sitting kind of up by the shoulders off to the side, fairly close to the patient. But you got to think of access, of course. Like ideally you want room for 2 people on each side. You're going to want room at the head for minimum 2 people for that airway and ventilation. So you're going to have an oxygen bottle hanging out up front. You're going to have suction hanging out in front, accessible. I like having a towel there as well for vomit. And yeah, you need space, and then you're gonna need vascular access at some point on the arms too. So a little bit of bouncing around, working around the medics, throwing the lines in, getting things ready to go. So by having that moment to pull and get some free space, it's everything. It's the same as a fire. MVA, set up for success. You're not going to be throwing your tools and tarp down 2 feet away from the car where you're going to be cutting. Patience the same way. Right? Set things up where you have room to work.
I think a lot of people, not so much first responders, I think they have to, like, where the person falls, that's where you have to work on them. I don't know if I think it's a crime scene or what's going on some days. Like, some days where you get in there and they're like, "Why? What are you guys doing?" Usually when we roll in, it's like, yeah, we like deconstruct the room, or like you said, probably drag them out. But yeah, I quite often find, like, when we get in there, usually the people that are there, the initial responders, like, the untrained kind of civilians, are usually they're kind of like, they don't want to touch anything, so they're kind of working around the scene. And then, obviously when we roll in, we've had that experience, so we know we want so much space. But yeah, I've often noticed that. I know when I get when it's family members, they're obviously having a awful moment of panic. But even like general bystanders, they're working around cars, and we've seen people go down between 2 cars, and things like that. There's safety there, and grocery stores and kind of stuff like that. Where pull them out of the way, make some room, cordon off the area, that we can do that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the bedroom, like those cardiac arrests that happen in bed, a lot of people, like, they'll drag them off to the side of the bed, and they won't drag them out, and that can be fine. But we still need that bed out of the way. So depending on the type of bed, if it's just a basic frame and mattress and stuff and box spring that's not attached to the big headboard or a wall, flip that fucker right up on the side. Get it out of the way. We've done that before as well. Then you kick away all the crazy vibrators and dildos you find under the mattress. We've seen a lot.
I was literally going to say the dust bunnies, but no,
Todd, some dust bunnies as well, maybe. But there's some crazy things that you have to be aware of when you do flip that mattress up. But yeah, it's about getting that real estate, man. Like, it may not be efficient to drag them out, that 25 feet down that hallway. Maybe better just to flip that mattress up. So, sorry for the graphic image, but these flashbacks of calls. So.
You're not sorry at all.
All right, well, maybe we'll cap off Todd's training there before we get to sideways. I think it might be a bit too late for that.
Well, it's not just vibrators and dildos. There's been firearms and stuff we've had to get, remove and kick off to the side, and generally we tell somebody that we know that's exactly with firearms, say, hey, secure that thing, get it out of the way. So that's happened a lot.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be a bit more of the commonplace. Anyway, any more on that? Well, not on that, but any more not on that.
No. Yeah, I could go on and on about CPR stuff, but if you are curious on what we mean with the pit crew CPR, there's actually a lot of good videos. I don't know the exact heading on YouTube, but there's an ambulance company out in Europe, in England. They did a pit crew CPR video, and it's really good about setting up success. They have the visuals, the graphics on, like, the kind of your work zones and stuff, and it's definitely geared more towards the EMS setup, but it works.
So I got a question. Were they laying under the bed, or are they like in cases? How was that, like, just like laying willy-nilly?
Very willy-nilly. Well, in some cases, I guess no willy. That's why it was there.
All right, then.
Oh my god.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. It's a common humor thing for first responders. Anybody who's a first responder will laugh and understand this. If you're not, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. So, the only thing I was going to say, when you talk about your pit crew CPR and you liken it to F1, I'm looking over at that greasy ass mustache. I'm like, how could you not say NASCAR?
First and last. It's all about the NASCAR.
That's right. Oh, Ricky Bobby. All right, well, on that, we are going to call it because we're going sideways in a hurry. So I think we'll wrap up there and get into some of our shout outs. Todd, why don't you tell us a bit about Modus?
Yeah, Modus. Yeah, what can we say? They have fantastic equipment. Snagger tools, claim to fame. Multiple other small firefighter tools as well. The mini spanners are definitely my go-to. I love the mini spanners. I use them a lot. Getting into a lot of the textiles as well. Their bags and their pouches. You guys are rocking some of the bigger bags for the hydrant kits. Apart back there, the radio strap, Ash is rocking right now. We're trialing that. Yeah, DTFF5 will give you 5% off any order. Go online, check them out, and order their shit. They make some really nice stuff. We love them.
Yeah, 100%. Scott, stop the bleed.
Yeah, free methods of bleeding control are direct pressure, wound packing, and tourniquet application. If you're going to use a tourniquet, use a good one. Typically a cat or a soft T. There's also some newer ones like the Sam Splint, or Sam Splint, the Sam tourniquet that just came out. Not actually, it hasn't just come out; it's been out for a while. But yeah, make sure it's a good tourniquet. Don't get a crappy one. And for training, you can go on stopthebleed.org, stopthebleed.ca, .os. Like there's basically look up Stop the Bleed. You're going to find it somewhere in your country. You can become an instructor in it. Just learn how to do it. It's really basic, but it's important to know, and it's very important to practice. And when you practice it, do it in high fidelity situations. Get some adrenaline pumping, and make some stress happen after people have been trained properly, and see how it goes.
Awesome. Todd, Tanner Olson, man.
Tanner Olson, country music out of West Coast Canada, but it sounds like Scott was saying, they've been in Nashville for quite a while. Got a few new songs out there, so check them out on your listening platforms. And yeah, we're big supporter of Tanner and the guys. They're a fantastic band. Scott, have you heard, are they still in Nashville for a while, or were they touring again, or just writing songs?
Every time I see them, they're in Nashville, so I don't know how long they're staying there for, but that's where they are right now, and I think they will eventually. I don't know. Hopefully.
Yeah, so Tanner Olson Band, check them out on your listening platforms.
Lastly, but not leastly, Scott, Wolf Tree Coffee.
Yeah, Wolf Tree Coffee. Actually, I had some just before I came. Now I'm like, woo. Yeah, Wolf Tree Coffee. You get the initial attack blend, which is our blend that we made or made with them, and $2. Goes $2 of every pound goes to pound sold goes to Honor House Society. There it is, right there. But if you don't get the initial attack, there's other blends they have as well. They will deliver anywhere in the province right now. No, not deliver. They will hand deliver anywhere in the valley, but they will ship anywhere.
Ship anywhere.
Ship anywhere. There you go. So check them out on wolftreecoffee.ca.com. Yeah.
Beauty. And lastly, you have us. If you've listened to this long, thank you so much. Who's all rocking the merch? Beautiful. I am not rocking the merch. I'm sorry. Yeah, check us out. There's still some of our Moose shirts left. GTF store to place your order there. We also ship anywhere. So if you like that, check us out there. We'd love to get that on somebody's Christmas list, I'm sure. So merch there. Again, you can find us on all of the major streaming platforms. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for that. Definitely seeing our YouTube viewership go up, so we appreciate that. We're also on the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the TikToks. Definitely appreciate everybody has been funneling some of their viewership over there. Give us a like, share, subscribe. If you see something that you like, comment on it. If you see something you don't, comment on it. The more activity, the better. So yeah, I appreciate that. Todd, anything else?
Nope. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.
Scott?
Good night.
All right. Thanks, everybody. As always, stay safe. Stay GTFF.